About a week ago, I attempted my first ever speedrun. Previously, I streamed a full Pokemon Sword playthrough in just one sitting that took me over 20 hours to complete. So this time, I decided to play back through the Galar region as fast as possible on my copy of Shield. After looking over the rules and skimming through some of the top speedrunners' videos, I felt I had a decent enough understanding to take a stab at it, and I hit the go live button. I could not have been more wrong. I would find out during this playthrough that I misunderstood how a lot of Pokemon Shield mechanics work. That gap in knowledge, paired with a lack of research and notes to guide me as I play, would ruin my run. Typical Pokemon speedrunners use a team of 2, Arcanine in either a Whimsicott or an Excadrill. When planning a team comp for my own run, I settled on a team of 3, Inteleon, Arcanine, and Whimsicott. This was my first pitfall. In Pokemon X and Y, the experience share was transformed from a held item to a key item that split experience gained from battle between all Pokemon in the party. In Sword and Shield, this key item was removed entirely, as experience split between the party became a feature of the game instead. Meaning, by keeping my starter, he would effectively be siphoning off experience from the other 2 members of the party, which is critical since a speedrunner will skip as many battles as possible to shave as much time as they can. Since the Whimsicott I used was obtained through an in-game trade with an NPC, it still receives bonus XP, but Arcanine was especially hindered by this. In a Pokemon Shield speedrun, Arcanine is the cornerstone of your team. But why is Arcanine so popular for speedrunning? Well, that's easy. He's busted. Even though Arcanine isn't classified along with other mythical Pokemon of the series, there is a reason he's listed as the legendary Pokemon in the Pokédex. Arcanine's base stat total is 555. To give some context, that's more than Snorlax, Mamoswine, Charizard, even Haxorus and Duraludon. It can also know the ability Flash Fire, protecting itself from any fire-type attack and preventing burns from moves like Will-O-Wisp. Growlithe can be encountered at any time on Route 3, right after attending the opening ceremony in Motostoke, but actually Growlithe can make a debut even earlier if you know what you're doing. This was my second mistake. The Pokemon series has been using time-related mechanics such as the day-night cycle since Generation 2. Sword and Shield are no exception, but they do utilize these time-based mechanics in a very different way. None of the mainline story routes are affected by the time and date on your Switch. However, all of the wild areas in the game use time-based mechanics. The most important of which are weather conditions and the item stock of Watt Traders, which is needed to buy some early quick balls for the Fire Gym's catching challenge. By presetting the time and date on your Switch, you can guarantee the weather and other factors of your run, completely eliminating certain elements of randomness that could otherwise affect your time. I did not do this. Even though manually setting the time and date you want to use for your run is completely legitimate and not against the rules, I decided not to. As a shiny hunter by trade, I'm extremely stubborn and accept all odds, even if it's something ridiculous, say like 1 in 8,192. Growlithe appears in sections of the wild area under intense sunlight. If you preset your date or happen to play on the right day, the very first section of the wild area can spawn in the most pivotal member of your team. Then, by boxing the rest of your team and getting knocked out by the closest fixed spawn Pokemon, the woman just outside the train station will allow you to teleport all the way to the entrance of Motostoke. But instead of continuing on your merry way, if you take a small detour across the river nearby, you can find the Firestone along the brick walls to the left. Take another L from the nearest wild Pokemon, teleport back to Motostoke, evolve your Growlithe into Arcanine, and teach it extreme speed before you even get to the opening ceremony. Now you must be thinking, wow, I can get Arcanine this early in the game? That's so easy. I'm gonna go try my first speedrun now. Wait, there's more. Sword and Shield is the first game in the series to implement one of my personal favorite changes. Remember in the past games how the Name Rater, Move Deleter, and Move Relearner were all different people scattered to the 4 winds of the region? Some of them not even appearing until just before the Elite Four? God, that was dumb. In this gen, all of those things can be done through a single person, and that person is located inside every Pokemon Center in the game. If you caught your fiery pupper in the wild area and evolved them by the time you entered the Pokemon Center just inside the Motostoke entrance, you have a wonderful opportunity to teach that good doggo some new tricks. Arcanine has a pretty wide range of different moves it can learn, but it doesn't learn any of them through leveling up. Instead, the barista inside the Pokemon Center will help you prepare for future battles by offering to teach Arcanine a plethora of new useful moves for free. Now there are different combinations of movesets that serve their own purposes, and some speedrunners opt to swap moves in and out throughout their run depending on what challenges await them on the horizon. but for the purposes of this video, I'm only going to cover 3. Flamethrower, Crunch, and Burn Up are your bread and butter. Flamethrower is an extremely powerful stab fire move. Crunch allows you to easily crush Bead and any other Psychic or Ghost type Pokemon, which you'll need to take on at your 4th gym. And Burn Up, this is where things get a little more interesting. Burn Up is a special fire type move with 130 base power and 100 accuracy, but it only has 5 total uses and can only be used once every time Arcanine takes the field. At first glance, you might think, well, yeah, it's a strong fire move, but with all these limitations, why would Burn Up be used for a speedrun? The answer to that question is due to Burn Up's extremely unique trait. The reason it can only be used once every time its user hits the field is because the move removes the user's fire typing in order to use it. For Pokemon like Colossal and Centiskorch, this move turns them into a pure rock and bug type respectively. However, for pure fire type Pokemon like Arcanine and Typhlosion, this move doesn't turn them into normal types, it turns them into Null. No, not the Pokemon type Null, which is kind of a misnomer. Arcanine's type becomes Null. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. There is no official designation in the game for this new, or lack thereof, typing. After using Burn Up, Arcanine no longer gains an attack boost from using fire type attacks and no longer has a defensive bonus against fire's natural resistances like grass and bug moves. But this also means that Arcanine isn't weak to anything either. To include water attacks, which is especially useful for winning your 2nd gym against Nessa. As for the other member of your team, there are a few different options. Many of the top speedrunners opt for either Excadrill or Whimsicott. Though Excadrill is an extremely strong Pokemon, Drillbur isn't available until you reach the 2nd set of sections in the wild area. And even still, it spawns in at a high enough level that you can't reliably catch it until after the 5th gym. So although it is an effective strategy if done correctly, it is equally risky since Arcanine will be the only Pokemon in the party for the majority of the run. Since I didn't take this route on my run, I won't be covering the details of this method. Another viable strategy comes from a speedrunning guide that many people use. As mentioned previously, this is what I had tried to integrate into my own run. This method is called Candy Floss, which is named after the cottony obtained through an in-game trade. When entering the wild area for the first time, if the weather is normal by chance or you change the time settings of your Switch, Minccino will have a 35% encounter rate from shaking grass. It can also be an overworld spawn in Route 5, but it has a much higher level at this point in the game and is much harder to catch. And is surprisingly strong. In any case, after reaching Hulbury and running into another encounter with definitely not Chairman Rose, you can head down to an area with a bunch of shopping stands, one of which you can buy the rose incense from. Sitting at the far table on the left is a woman who will offer to trade a cottony for your Minccino. Candy Floss the cottony is a huge pickup at this point in the game. Now that you have the bike, you can fly back to East Lake Axwell just outside of Motostoke and bike your way across the river and over to the Dusty Bull, careful to avoid any encounters on your way. Just behind some big rocks lies the Sunstone. Fly back to Hulbury, enter the Pokemon Center, equip your cottony with that rose incense from before, and evolve it with the Sunstone. Now you can teach your Candy Floss a bunch of super new powerful moves from the Move Reminder. A recommended build would be Giga Drain, Energy Ball, Moonblast, and Hurricane. I'm not much of a fan of Hurricane myself due to its low accuracy, but it could come in clutch depending on the situation, and if you ever feel the need to Dynamax, Max Airstream is a more reliable flying move that gives an extra speed boost. Not only will Whimsicott sweep Nessa in order for you to take the water badge, it will be super helpful for all encounters against Team Yell, the Dark Gym, and the Dragon Gym as well. And if you're running Pokemon Sword, the Ghost Gym will be replaced with the Fighting Gym, making that an easy victory too. As if that wasn't enough, because Whimsicott was obtained through a trade, even an in-game one, the amount of experience Candy Floss receives will increase by 50%. Even with all the trainer skips and lack of wild encounters, Whimsicott's level will actually be slightly above that of your opponents throughout the rest of the game, which is something Arcanine will struggle to do, even with a 2-Pokemon team. Regardless of what team you decide to use for your run, there are a couple more things you should understand and use during your own. If you're anything like me, it's likely you've never used battle items in a regular playthrough of any Pokemon game. When skimming through some of the runs, I saw people buy a lot of these, but never paid any attention to what they actually did because, well, I thought I already knew. If you haven't figured out the theme of my run yet, I was wrong. again. Since the nomenclature of these items start with X, I had assumed this meant max, as in it would max the stat of whatever the item's name correlated with. So when I bought 30 X special attacks, I thought that at the beginning of important battles like gym or rival battles, I'd pop a battle item, max out the stat I needed, and one hit KO everything I saw. Looking back at it now, I realized this would make these items incredibly broken, and I was pretty dumb for making this assumption in the first place. Instead, these items boost a stat by 2 stages, and only by 1 stage in every generation prior to Sun and Moon. If you're not familiar with the inner workings of stat changes, anytime a Pokemon is on the field, it starts at a neutral stage, or 0. Each of a Pokemon's stat can increase or decrease by a maximum of 6 stages. Every 2 stages increases by a multiplier of 2, 3, and 4, and stat decreases go down by the inverse respectively. It's important to note that these changes only last for as long as that Pokemon remains on the field. If you or your opponent swap out their Pokemon, the stat changes of that Mon will completely reset. So, in a speedrun, if you boost your Pokemon's stat using battle items, you should be prepared to use that Pokemon for the rest of the battle. Mistaking the strength and importance of the battle items cost me quite a bit of time as I struggled with later game battles. Particularly the Ghost Gym, which I lost an entire half hour to since it took me 5 attempts. And I only won because I stalled out Gengar's G-Max by using the Pokemon caught at the Fire Gym as cannon fodder. Sorry about that. As for the smaller details in this speedrun, a lot of it will be practice and taking good notes. Some of the biggest things to remember will be the pattern of gym missions and what necessary battles will start with which Pokemon. Sometimes making a single mistake in a speedrun will cost you a much bigger chunk of time than you'd expect. And sometimes there will even be an element of luck. Even though Pokemon is not a very difficult game series, it's more complicated than you'd think, especially if you're gunning for a top spot in a speedrun. In the end, my run wasn't even close to the top competitors, but I was still able to make it into the top 50 speedrunners of Pokemon Shield worldwide. Out of 50. But hey, that's still a win in my book, we take those. But seriously, for my first speedrun ever, I still had a lot of fun and learned a lot about the game I honestly hardly played during its peak. For someone who grew up with Pokemon throughout their childhood, there's still so much I don't know about the different aspects of the franchise and community. I look forward to more attempts in the future as I aim to hit a sub 5-hour run. With Pokemon Scarlet and Violet releasing in the coming month, I'll also be interested to see what tactics the speedrunning community come up with in terms of team comps and strategy, and I hope to join in on some theory crafting myself. I'm sure I'll be doing a lot of speedruns for those games too, so I hope you look forward to hearing about my experience with that as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later. Peace.